Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Morning, thank you. I'm Richard Bate, President of the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the IOSH conference here at Intersec 2026. I'd like to extend a special welcome to all members of the occupational safety and health profession. I see a lot of you here, as we gather to learn, connect and engage over the next 3 days, as we explore the future of our profession. We've brought together thought leaders, innovators, to spotlight how AI is transforming risk management. We'll examine the growing importance of well-being and address critical strategies and drivers of health and safety risks in the future world of work. The programme's packed with practical insights and global perspectives. So for those of you who are not familiar with IOSH, let me share what the institution represents. So the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health is the world's largest professional health and safety membership organisation. We were founded in 1945, and it's fair to say that we've changed and grown a lot in the past 80 years. We now have more than 50,000 members in 130 countries. We're safety professionals, we're health practitioners, we're risk managers, educators, and advocators united by a common purpose. And that's to ensure that everyone can work safely and return home healthy at the end of each day. So what's our vision? Well, it's actually pretty simple, but it's profound. And it's to promote and regulate professional standards in occupational safety and health. We do this through professional development, research, advocacy, and through collaboration. We set the standards for occupational safety and health competency. We provide world-class training and qualifications and champion evidence-based practice. But we don't work in isolation. We couldn't work in isolation. IOSH is committed to working with people, businesses, governments and institutions, all with the common interest of advancing towards a safe and healthy future of work for all. We believe in the power of partnership because challenges we face are too complex for any single organisation, or in fact, too complex for any nation to solve alone. I think it's fair to say that the global and local landscape of OSH is changing. Today, we stand at a critical juncture for occupational safety and health. Globally, we face unprecedented challenges. Rapidly evolving work environments, the integration of artificial intelligence and automation, climate change impacts on worker safety, mental health concerns, and the ongoing effects of how we reimagined work during the COVID pandemic. According to the International Labour Organization, nearly 3 million workers die each year from occupational accidents and work-related diseases. And behind each statistic is a family, a community, and that impact ripples outwards. That's why our work matters, and that's why we cannot rest. But we also see tremendous progress. Across the world, organizations are recognizing that safety isn't just a compliance requirement, it's a moral imperative and it's a business advantage. Companies that invest in robust safety cultures see reduced incidents, improved productivity, enhanced employee engagement, and stronger reputations. According to the International Labour Organization, nearly 3 million people die each year, workers die each year, from occupational accidents and work-related diseases. I'm sure you'll agree, 3 million workers dying each year. That's an absolutely stratospheric number. And behind each statistic, there's a family, a husband, a wife, children, and a community. And it's such a loss that ripples outwards. This is why our work matters, and this is why we cannot and we will not rest. To move the needle forward on these figures, we need more than just intent. We need a global shift in how we approach harm reduction. And that's one of the reasons why we're here for the next 3 days. So some of you may have seen the Arab report commissioned by IOSH on a safe and healthy future world of work. It's a great document, and you can see that you'll be able to scan the QR code. And it poses some really interesting questions and future thinking on where the OSH profession might be going. with calls to action for businesses, for leaders, for governments, and also importantly, for us as OSH professionals. It poses a fundamental question. Are we living through a time of rapid evolution or a more fundamental revolution? Well, I know which one of those two statements I believe. As well as imagining future scenarios in which the skills of safety and health professionals will be challenged, it also indicates ways in which they may, with the right development, meet such challenges. And to pose those challenges further, IOSH spoke to specialists in the field of climate change and AI and technology, mental health and well-being, and we were also looking at the gig economy and the implications of that. So let's see what they have to say.
What I've realized is that it's no longer a future event. Climate change is here. We're already seeing the real world consequences of that.
I don't think that you can rely on all employers to do the right thing when it comes to mental health. And when rules were first introduced about child labour, there were some employers who pushed against that and said that it would interfere with the freeness of the market.
There is much more economic pressure, and safety is always, unfortunately, impacted by poor economics.
So if there's 1.7 million workers in that gig economy in the UK last year, it's expected to rise by 300% by 2027.
New technologies are of course going to make us extremely vulnerable to third-party incidents because unfortunately there's just bad actors out there when it comes to technology.
We can see the change. It's subtle, but it is happening. And the truth is, climate change doesn't care about governments or borders or businesses.
If they'd grown up in a different generation, they would have a different relationship with their mental health, which might have benefited them.
From what we will experience in terms of increased heat, perhaps UV exposure, skin cancer for workers that we have outside, that's huge.
So we've seen that they might not necessarily get training that other employees will get. They might not necessarily get the information, the instruction, risk assessment, and those traditional health and safety protections.
Monitoring technologies like cameras and location tracking, GPS, for example, have significant benefits for workplace health and safety, but they also have the potential to introduce significant unintended consequences. And a lot of this has to do with micromanagement and big brother approach to how these technologies are implemented by our workplaces.
What we're saying actually is that let's look at all workers as workers and let's just make sure they've got the same protections that all employees have so that we can support the health, the safety and their well-being. So regardless of that status, let's just make sure that there are arrangements in place.
Why are we using these technologies? And if a worker is taken along for the journey, if they're engaged early, if they're provided an opportunity to design the solution, to be participants in the selection, in the testing, in the implementation, we're going to get a far better relationship with technology and the ability to maximise those benefits and mitigate all of those unintended consequences.
What I do believe is that fundamentally we are quite intelligent professionals who are capable of figuring it out. We can solve these problems, and what we have to do is kind of win hearts and minds, refine the comms and just push through that resistance in organisations to a point where sustainability is everybody's job and this is just the way we operate and it's not even a question.
Connection is a fundamental human need and it's really the cornerstone of everything when it comes to mental health. When you actually listen with the intention of understanding, you will find yourself saying Things like, oh, I've never thought about it that way, or nothing like that has ever happened to me or anyone that I know of. What's that like? That's a far more helpful response.
If we want to improve the workplace for everyone, then we need not only to ask as low as reasonably practical, but as fair as reasonably practical. We need to think about safety from the lens of equity and inclusion and fairness, and not solely an issue of safe. Think learn and unlearn, and be prepared to challenge your own beliefs, views, and approaches.
So I hope you see there were some really insightful comments shared with us there. And I think by asking a series of what-if questions about how things might develop, this will give us all food for thought. So I'm not going to read all of those because obviously you're more than capable of reading them yourselves, but I'm going to pick out a few. So what if gig work overtakes secure employment, leading to far fewer social protections for our workers? That's worth considering. What if deregulation leads to a reduction in OSH standard and makes it more difficult for OSH professionals to influence discussions? What if technologies inform an employer of a health condition before the employee? Think about that. And what if the application of new technologies to improve worker protection creates other safety and well-being risks that we hadn't considered? So as well as imagining future scenarios in which the skills of safety and health professionals will be challenged, the report indicates ways in which they may, with the right training and development, meet such challenges. So we posed these questions to specialists in the field. One of the key areas of focus was around technology and digitization. More and more tasks and jobs are becoming automated, and this is reshaping the world of work. As safety professionals, we're often excited by the potential of new technologies to reduce harm and to protect workers. But what if those very tools introduce new risks, and ones that we're not yet prepared for? And what if the application of technologies to improve worker protection creates other health, safety, and well-being risks? So I'd like to consider, what will these technologies do? What are the implications for us? And how are we prepared for those challenges? Have we thought about it? Have we considered how not just AI, but other advancing technologies will affect us in the future? This is another interesting number. Some predict that up to 81% of tasks will be automatable through AI. Now, we posed this to safety technologist specialist Cam Stevens, who you saw earlier in the video. So Cam Stevens gives us an insight on the considerations we need to make when adapting new technology. So let's take a look.
Well, all digital technologies have cybersecurity risk, and artificial intelligence technologies in particular have new threats to our organisations. A really good example of that is deepfakes, things like synthetic voice cloning, where an organisation an employee might get a phone call from what they think is their manager asking them for some sensitive information, which they would normally divulge. But in this case, it might be actually a synthetic voice asking for that. So there are some really creative ways that bad actors are trying to penetrate organisations from a cyber perspective. And just like we need to manage health and safety risks by understanding the threats and identifying controls, we have to do that with cybersecurity risk as well. So it's not that we shouldn't be using these technologies, we have to be really understanding this new threat profile, this new risk profile, and coming up with just as creative ways to mitigate these risks as these bad actors are to try and get past our cybersecurity. There are absolutely use cases where machines outperform humans time and time again. A good example of that is using computer vision, machine learning, artificial intelligence for cancer cell diagnosis as a real classic example. But what these machines can't do is to have that human context, the human analysis, those critical empathy type skills that are needed to be able to pull together a lot of different disparate data sets and make sense of that. So Right now, it is absolutely about determining which use cases are better for machines to be taking the lead and which use cases are better for humans to be taking the lead. And this is not about and or, so humans or machines. It's about humans plus machines better together. AI automation in our workplaces will absolutely bring new risks to our enterprise. And what we need to appreciate here is a lot of those new risks are likely to be psychosocial risks. So physical risks get reduced by large-scale automation, particularly AI-based automation, but we're also now changing the paradigm and the nature of how work is performed through AI-assisted automation. And therefore, we have to be very clear about how these risks are coming into our organisations and what risk controls we need to put in place to mitigate those not really unintended, they should be forecastable risks that are coming into our business. It's up to us as health and safety professionals to forecast what those risks are going to be, to clearly understand them, and to put risk controls in place before we get those unintended consequences occur. So what got us to where we are won't get us to where we need to in the future. There are so many new opportunities to control risks with the application of new technologies. But these new technologies also bring new risks with those to the business. So as health and safety professionals, we need to look at ourselves as agents of change in the future of work, to anticipate these new risks, to understand that a lot of these new risks will be psychosocial in nature. We have to be curious, experiment, explore this modern working world and take charge and thrive in the future of work.
For those of you who don't follow Cam Stevens on LinkedIn, I would recommend that you do. I've got a takeaway from that video. Being curious is something that I pride myself. I've always been a curious kind of person. But what are Cam's takeaways? New technology creates new risks. I think we'd all accept that, wouldn't we? AI and automation can introduce cyber and well-being threats. Cybersecurity is also a safety issue. Deepfakes and voice cloning can cause real harm. Humans must stay in the loop, and this is so important. AI supports decisions but shouldn't replace good OSH judgment. And remember, AI is not sentient. It's not human. We need to evolve with technology. As OSH professionals, we must anticipate digital risks and adapt controls to meet those risks. Likely best outcome. For me, I think it's going to be a combination of human and machine, combining technology with empathy and critical thinking. So what do professionals like us need to do? Well, we need to be at the table for discussions about digital and technological interventions. Unless we're there, we can't advocate for safety in design and worker-centered approaches. We must consider what model of regulation and enforcement will be required to harness the benefits of these developments while protecting people's standards and, critically, the environment. So technology is also helping us move forward in the way we protect workers from environmental challenges. Now, climate change is affecting us all, and I don't think anybody would doubt that, or any of you that are sat here today would doubt that climate change is affecting us, particularly in our workspaces. And we accept that there are going to be differing views on this, but the fact remains, the planet is warming. Look at this number. It's another stratospherically high number. 100,000 heat-related deaths per year caused by climate change. Climate adaptation is now falling into the OSH professionals' remit. That's us. Extreme weather events and hotter weather will mean exposure to tropical diseases. And adaptation is going to require changes to the way we manage worker welfare. So let's hear from someone who's got a really grounded and insightful take on climate safety. Tama Carell is an environmental consultant with a biology, psychology, and sustainability background, and she really is world-class. She's worked across industries and knows how climate change connects to the real-world challenges we face in health and safety. So I think most of us will accept that climate change is affecting us all. And in this clip, Tama talks about why climate change matters to all of us and why we as OSH professionals are in a unique position to lead this change. So let's listen to what Tama has to say.
I've always fundamentally believed that environmental protection is part of protecting human health and well-being. Again, if you take it back to, the academic definition of sustainability, we talk about the triple bottom line of sustainability, this destination where people, planet, and profit are equal and equitable, and we have some balance. And the way it was described to me at university, in fact, during my first degree, was like a three-legged stool. So if you have a three-legged stool with people, planet, profit, all equal and equitable, you have a perfectly functional stool. However, if one of those legs is too long or one of those legs is too short, then the stool will topple over. It is unsustainable. And what that really highlights is, again, that interconnectedness of people, planet, and profit, that the three cannot exist in isolation. Now, I specialize in environmental management, but a lot of the businesses that I go into work with, I would typically be working with the health, safety, environmental, and quality teams, because the way businesses approach sustainability is through management systems, which are standardized to cover those three elements: health and safety, environment, and quality. And so it is falling on the responsibility of OSH professionals to navigate some really complicated environmental considerations. So it's kind of what's happening in the world, and then drawing it back to, but what does that mean on the ground for the health, safety, and well-being of our workforce and our business? Because, we're talking about critical materials, critical processes, protecting our people, protecting our resources. And if we don't, again, take that holistic triple bottom line perspective, we undermine everything. What I'm finding, though, is that a lot of health and safety professionals are getting environmental sustainability added into their job remit. And from a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Practically, functionally, that is the department that has the greatest ability to bring environmental management and sustainability into how the business operates. And with health and safety, having done the journey already and, so ingrained in organizational culture, it's actually a great opportunity to tap into that. I do think one of the barriers is that, education for sustainability and knowledge around sustainability and understanding some of the complexities of what we're dealing with at a global scale, that kind of knowledge gap is probably the biggest barrier at the moment. But they definitely have the fundamental skills that are necessary to progress better environmental management and better sustainability strategies. The time is critical. The next 5 years between now and 2030 really, really matter. So if we make climate change and sustainability the heart of conversations, the heart of how businesses operate, I believe we have every opportunity to slow the tide, to mitigate the worst consequences of climate change beyond that 2 degrees centigrade threshold. And then we will be able to look for opportunities to now regenerate and restore the natural environment, which fundamentally will continue to keep us alive by providing clean air, clean food, and clean water. I think it's really important that we redefine what health and safety means in a modern workplace. And health and safety considers the health and safety of individuals, but should also consider the health and safety of our environment. Our care to our employees is more than slips, trips, and falls. It's about creating work that is meaningful, work that enhances the environment that surrounds us, and fundamentally seeking to protect those most fundamental needs for humans, and also making sure that we create a future-ready and resilient workforce for some of the challenges we might still face in the future.
So again, Tama is somebody that I recommend you follow. Her TED Talk, her 18-minute TED Talk is absolutely world class. So do we agree climate change is a workplace risk? Extreme heat, supply chain disruptions are already impacting worker safety and business continuity. Do we agree that OSH roles are expanding? I'd love to talk to you about it if you don't agree, and come and talk to us on the IOSH stand. And many OSH professionals are now expected to integrate environmental sustainability into their responsibilities. And that is certainly true of me. In fact, it inspired me, Tama was partly inspired me to go back to university and study sustainability. Risk assessment, did you pick up on that comment? Risk assessment is a powerful tool. Applying traditional OSH risk assessment methods to climate-related challenges can help business adapt and protect workers. That's a powerful statement. And redefining health and safety. Modern OSH must include climate resilience, mental well-being, and equity. Really important, picking up on equity, and not just focus on physical hazards. So we know the OSH role is changing. There are so many new considerations within the window of OSH. So in this next segment, we're going to come back to James Pomeroy, who we met in the first video. James was heavily involved in the work around IOSH's white paper on the future world of work. He makes it clear that doing the things the way we have done in the past just won't cut it in the future. It's not just managing risks anymore. We're navigating a whole new world of work. So let's hear what James has to say.
If we want to improve the workplace for everyone, then we need not only to ask as low as reasonably practical, but as fair as reasonably practical. We need to think about safety from the lens of equity and inclusion and fairness, and not solely an issue of safe. We also need to ask who's making those judgments on safety and how much we involve those who are affected by the decision making. Think, learn and unlearn, and be prepared to challenge your own beliefs, views, and approaches.
So let's look at some of the key takeaways that James shared with us there. Evolve or risk irrelevance. That's so insightful. The profession must adapt or risk becoming obsolete, sadly, like parts of the quality sector. Focus on what matters. Serious injuries and fatalities remain stubbornly high. This must remain our focus and our top priority. Think beyond compliance. Safety is now about equity, dignity, and inclusion, and not just rules and checklists. Learn, unlearn, relearn. I love that statement, and I've adapted it. Challenge outdated beliefs, stay agile in a fast-changing world. And look outside of safety. Borrow from other fields, marketing, operations, and technology to innovate and to stay relevant. So some calls to action for businesses and for employers. IOSH urges businesses to align with the UN Sustainable Development Goals for enhanced social sustainability through strong OSH practices. We emphasize the need for inclusive workforces that protect vulnerable groups and address diverse OSH needs. We call for identification and management of existing and emerging OSH risks through supply chains, including small suppliers. And our calls for action to you, the OSH profession. Members are encouraged to understand the changes highlighted in the report, to promote safety in design and human-centric approaches to protect and nurture our workers. Develop additional skills to become invaluable to their organizations. That's something that I've done as an older professional, as I saw the value in retraining. And to support social sustainability and ethical practices. So, as OSH professionals, the challenge ahead isn't just about new tools and technology, it's about evolving how we think, learn, and lead in an increasingly complex world of work. Now, some of you who are IOSH members will already have seen this report. There's a QR code. Please feel free to scan the code. If you want to delve more into the white paper, I would recommend that you read this report. It is a world-class piece of work. And ultimately what it means is the report's an urgent call to action for all of us. So as you scan the QR code and we begin these wonderful 3 days together, I want to leave you with a thought. Our profession exists because all of us, people, matter. Every regulation we advocate for, every risk assessment that we conduct, every training session we deliver, and every conversation that we have with a colleague who seems stressed or unwell. All of it comes down to the fundamental belief that every person deserves to work without fear of injury, illness, or death. In a world that often prioritizes speed and profit, we are the voices that say, but at what cost? We're the professionals who ask the difficult questions, who challenge assumptions, and speak up when others might stay silent. This is going to require courage, expertise, and on our behalf, conviction. So, what have we spent? 45 minutes together? 40 minutes? Clearly, we've covered a lot of ground in the last 40 minutes, and I really do appreciate your attention. But I want to leave you with one final number. While we were in the room, and since I said hello, you took your seats, 257 workers around the world have died from work-related causes. That's the time that you've been sitting listening to me. That's more than the capacity of this theatre. They were working while we've been talking, and now they're gone. They're no longer with us. We have the data, the technology, and the expertise to change this. The only thing missing is the scale of our action. So as you leave the theatre this morning, I ask you, what are you going to do about it? Thank you. Thank you.